Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 1, Thunderbolt. The central regions of the mountain range of magical beasts rarely saw humans passing through. Here, magical beasts of the 7th to 9th ranks could appear at any time. Most likely, only warriors of the 9th rank would dare trespass here. But Linley, upon arriving at the central region, began to embark on a northwards journey, along the central lines of the mountain range of magical beasts. Such an incredible journey was something which even most combatants of the 9th rank wouldn't be so wild as to attempt. Linley was only wearing a pair of ragged hemp cloth pants. His upper body was bare, and he was barefooted as well. On his back, he carried the adamantine heavy sword. Step by step, he continued on this path which few dared tread. As always, Bebe stood on Linley's shoulders, scanning the nearby area. Rustle, rustle. Linley walked through a thick layer of dried leaves, his face calm. His backpack, blood violet, straight chisel, and other clothes were all stored inside the interspatial ring. Within Clady's interspatial ring, aside from that enormous fortune of 2.2 billion gold coins worth of Magi crystal cards, there were also dozens of precious items. Even the least valuable of them was worth millions of gold coins. The wealth accumulated by the royal clan of Fenley over centuries was indeed a terrifying figure. But to Linley, wealth was merely a worldly possession. What he truly valued was his own strength. Hadn't the Dawson conglomerate been willing to directly offer him 100 million gold coins to join them? And this was just based on the mere possibility that Linley would reach the saint rank. To truly invite a saint rank to join, the price would be astronomical and astonishing. From this, one could tell how important one's personal strength was. Although Linley was in the core regions, Linley still quite sensibly avoided a region where he couldn't detect any magical beasts for tens of kilometers around. For such a large place within the core regions of the mountain range of magical beasts to be devoid of magical beasts most likely meant that the region was the territory of a saint-level magical beast. Although Linley was self-confident, he still didn't want to irritate a saint-level magical beast. Cutting his way through brambles and thistles, Linley wasn't traveling at a particularly high speed. Everything needs to start from the basics. Linley was extremely pragmatic. Every day, he carried the adamantine heavy sword on his back. Slashing, chopping, piercing, upward swinging. Linley continuously practiced with every possible move, trying non-stop to raise his attack power. Linley didn't train using only one method either. He would often ponder how to train next. Using the scant information in his clan's records regarding how some of his ancestors had trained, he tried to form a correct training regime for himself. The correct way of training was to not aim too high and too far right away. The dawning spring, the flourishing summer, the cool autumn, the freezing winter. No matter what season it was, Linley continued to only wear those tattered pants, which had been ripped countless times due to his dragon form transformation. His upper body remained bare. Linley had discovered something. When he was barefooted, he could more clearly sense the thrumming pulse of the earth. Standing on the ground, his heart was as steady as the vast earth itself. Linley's usage of the adamantine heavy sword also began to embody the weight of the world itself. His upper body was bare. Feeling the movement of the air against his body, Linley felt as though his entire being had become part of the wind itself. Wind, by its nature, was invisible and formless. When using the blood-violet flexible sword, Linley felt that he was wielding it with greater and greater ease. Because of this, Linley now emanated an aura that was both stable and immovable as well as graceful as the wind. These two auras should have been opposites, but the strange thing was, coming from Linley, they felt very natural and innate. Focusing primarily on the heavy sword, secondarily on the flexible sword, and also sparing some time for stone sculpting. At night, Linley would be in the meditative trance. Linley's entire life had entered a very particular regime of training. Sometimes, when he saw massive waterfalls crashing down from the top of the mountain range of magical beasts, Linley would feel excited and leap into the waterfalls, training beneath the water. Seeing those long, pure rivers, Linley would often wade into their waters. When he saw boulders atop mountain peaks, if Linley felt struck by inspiration, he would directly climb onto the top of the peaks and carve out a statue, perhaps spending several nights on each one. He did whatever he wanted. Linley's mind and spirit were more natural and more at ease than they ever had been before. Training under these conditions, Linley totally forgot the passage of time. He only felt that his strength was improving every single day, and every single improvement made him feel happy and moved. The path of training was a long, winding one. This was a hard road to travel, but on this path there were constant new breakthroughs, making one feel gratified and moved. Linley began to grow a beard, and his originally short hair began to grow long as well. His eyes, previously filled with a proud aloofness, had become calm and tranquil, due to the influence of being in touch with nature for so long. Only occasionally while training would his eyes become terrifyingly sharp. Linley's temperament, as well, had become molded by nature to become more stable. Without Doring Cowit's guidance, Linley had no one to rely upon. Naturally, he continued to develop and mature even more. Rumble. Water thundered down from the 100-meter-high waterfall, smashing down against the deep pool below, spraying water everywhere. Right next to the waterfall, there was a large boulder sticking up from the ground. There was a person seated cross-legged atop the boulder, with a black heavy sword resting atop his legs. It was early dawn. The sky was just beginning to lighten. Within the mountain range of magical beasts, one of the things Linley enjoyed doing was enjoying the clear dawn air. Linley opened his eyes. He glanced behind him, and saw Bei curled up right next to him. Bei's two little claws were stuck directly into the stone itself, so as to make sure there was no possibility he could roll off and fall. Bei, time to move, Linley said with a laugh. Bei opened his eyes lazily, glancing all around himself. Then he shook his head, clearing it of the last remnants of sleep, and stood up. Boss, I'm hungry. Let's go. We'll eat later. Linley leaped off the boulder. Moving as gracefully as the wind itself, Linley traversed several dozen meters with that leap, landing on the opposite shore of the pond. Also jumping off the boulder, Bei transformed into a black streak, finally landing next to Linley's feet. A man and a magical beast once more began their voyage. But before they had gone too far, Linley's footsteps suddenly halted. Bei looked questioningly at Linley. There's a magical beast nearby, Linley said mentally. Bei stared. Bei could now be considered an early-stage magical beast of the 9th rank. Generally speaking, there were very few magical beasts that could draw near without him sensing it. But this time, he hadn't sensed anything. With his feet pressed against the earth and his ability to sense the wind, it would be difficult for anything moving nearby to not attract Linley's attention. This magical beast's movements are light and graceful. I can't sense its movements on the earth at all. But when it moves, it causes vibrations in the wind, Linley said mentally. Bei nodded. A golden tattooed panther was latched onto a tree trunk, not moving at all. Panthers could be considered one of the fastest type of land-based magical beasts. In particular, the Saint-level Electrobolt Panther's movement speed made it an incredibly terrifying Saint-level magical beast to deal with. Golden tattooed panthers were magical beasts of the 7th rank. But as a panther-type magical beast, it naturally possessed the high speed which all panthers were known for. Its explosive, short-distance pouncing speed was even superior to magical beasts of the 8th rank. The golden tattooed panther suddenly exerted pressure with its 4 limbs. Swish! It leapt atop another tree. Panthers were extremely skilled at running and leaping about on tree tops, and were very well known for that as well. From within the dense leaves, the golden tattooed panther had already seen that distant human figure. The golden tattooed panther waited quietly. Waited for the human to draw near. Indeed, the human and the black shadow mouse were beginning to come nearer. A black shadow mouse? Not a threat. Magical beasts of the 7th rank possessed very high intelligence. The primary focus of the golden tattooed panther was that human. The aura that human emitted had already raised the golden tattooed panther's caution level. But the golden tattooed panther had the feeling that this human shouldn't be too powerful. Indeed, in his base form, Linley was only a late-stage warrior of the 7th rank. Generally speaking, when a magical beast of the 7th rank fought a human of the 7th rank, the magical beast would have the advantage. Swish! Leaping off from the tree trunk, the golden tattooed panther transformed into a vicious golden blur, gracefully soaring towards Linley. The seemingly totally unprepared human, suddenly, as fast as lightning, drew that adamantine heavy sword from his back while retreating. At the same time, he chopped down with that sword against the golden tattooed panther with tremendous power. Already in mid-leap, there was no way for the golden tattooed panther to change its trajectory. The only thing it could do was to do his best to move his head away. Bam! Flashing out like a lightning bolt, the adamantine heavy sword viciously slammed against the golden tattooed panther's body. Where it landed on the golden tattooed panther's body, a deep crevice appeared. The sounds of bones shattering could be heard. With that bam sound, the golden tattooed panther's body crashed to the ground. It lay twitching there, blood pouring out of its mouth. But within 10 seconds, the golden tattooed panther moved no more. Linley gracefully re-sheathed his adamantine heavy sword. "Bebe, our breakfast today will be panther flesh," Linley said casually. To Linley and Bebe, this was just a very ordinary event. Within the mountain range of magical beasts, they would kill several magical beasts every day. If an expert at using the sword had been present, they would clearly be able to tell that Linley, despite only being a late-stage warrior of the 7th rank, was able to utilize this 3,600-pound heavy sword at an extremely high level. Not only did the weight of the heavy sword not hinder Linley, Linley was even able to make use of its weight to make the speed of the heavy sword's blows faster. When chopping, he could actually chop a magical beast of the 7th rank to death at one blow. This power was simply astonishing. Linley and Bebe began to roast panther flesh in the middle of the mountain range of magical beasts. "Boss, how powerful is the most powerful attack you can now use with that heavy sword? A few days ago, you said you had a breakthrough," Bebe asked. They had been in the mountain range of magical beasts for over a year now. During this year, Linley's mind had become one with nature, and he had completely immersed himself in his training. This year and a half of training had improved his abilities at an extremely rapid pace. "My most powerful attack? Hard to say. Speaking in more general terms, I should be able to fight most magical beasts of the 8th rank in human form alone," Linley said confidently. This wasn't arrogance. This was confidence in his own power. "The panther meat smells so good." Bebe sniffed the air with his nose. "HRM?" Linley frowned, then suddenly laughed. "Bebe, when we roast meat, we often attract attention from magical beasts. Only, this time, this magical beast seemed to be quite a slow and clumsy one." After waiting a good while, Linley and Bebe finally saw a magical beast appear. "A velocidragon." "Velocidragon?" Linley began to laugh. Linley was now quite familiar with velocidragons. Despite being magical beasts of the 7th rank, they possessed extremely powerful defense. Although both were of the 7th rank, a velocidragon's defense was far more formidable than that of a golden tattooed panther. But in turn, the golden tattooed panther was far faster than a velocidragon. "Boss, you say that your attack power is really high now. Do you think you can chop a velocidragon to death with one sword stroke?" Bebe suddenly said. The scales of a velocidragon were nearly half a meter thick, and the bones of its skull were extremely hard and dense. Although velocidragons were fairly slow, their defense could match an ordinary magical beast of the 8th rank. "One sword blow? I haven't tested it yet. Let me give it a try." Linley drew the adamantine heavy sword from the sheath on his back, then began walking step by step towards the velocidragon. The Velocidragon was 2 stories tall and nearly 20 meters long. Compared to this enormous creature, Linley was nothing more than a small speck. Gruol! The Velocidragon roared angrily at Linley. But wielding the adamantine heavy sword in his hands, Linley continued to walk towards the Velocidragon, one barefooted step at a time. Suddenly, Linley's movements sped up dramatically as he charged towards the Velocidragon. Letting out an angry roar, the Velocidragon sent its draconic tail whipping towards Linley. The Velocidragon's tail was an extremely quick weapon. Clang! Linley's adamantine heavy sword suddenly moved at high speed and blocked the draconic tail. Despite the great lashing force of the Velocidragon's tail, Linley leapt off the ground, borrowing the force of the tail to fly over the Velocidragon. This is a human? The Velocidragon was surprised to discover that the man in front of him had wielded that adamantine heavy sword as easily and as naturally as the grass bowing from the wind. And now, that man was smashing directly down at his head with the sword. The Velocidragon was extremely confident. Its skull was, after all, the toughest part of its body. Indeed, when that agile, flowing black heavy sword touched his skull, it posed no danger to the Velocidragon at all. But all of a sudden, just as it touched the skull, an incredibly powerful force exploded from the sword. Like a sudden flood bursting through a dam, that astonishing power poured out all at once. It only heard a crack sound, and then everything went dark. Bei watched this scene in astonishment. Linley had only struck the skull, the toughest part of a Velocidragon's body, with a single blow from his sword. And then, the Velocidragon's head had split open like a fragile egg, with brain matter and blood pouring out. The massive, powerful body of the Velocidragon slumped to the ground, as Linley gracefully landed as well. Boss! Wow! You are that powerful now? Bei ran over excitedly. Linley laughed. Over the past year, I have been able to almost perfectly merge my own strength with my dragon blood battle chi. And then, based on what I have learned from my connection to the earth, I broke past the simple levels of using strength and battle chi. I have arrived at the level which the ancestors of the Barak clan described as wielding the heavy as though it were light. Only now, I have managed to develop this technique, Thunderbolt. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 2, The Howling World Wolf. The most basic underpinnings of training with the heavy sword lay in combining battle chi along with physical strength and utilizing it. Right after the adamantine heavy sword had been forged in the city of Hesse, when Linley had used the adamantine heavy sword to attack the violet-robed special executors, he was not capable of combining his strength and his battle chi to use the heavy sword in a meaningful way. The heavy sword was not meant to be used with pure brute force. It lay in conserving every little bit of strength to allow the heavy sword to reach its maximum possible velocity, while at the same time combining physical strength and battle chi to reach the most optimal level possible. After spending more than a year, Linley had finally become able to wield the adamantine heavy sword as easily as though it were his hands, without wasting any strength at all. Despite a limited amount of strength and battle chi, he was able to raise the power of the adamantine heavy sword to an extremely high level. But this was still just the basics. Above this basic level was the second level, a different realm of possibilities. This was something Linley had suddenly awoken to when he saw the crashing waterfalls within the mountain grotto. To wield something heavy as though it were light was easy to say, but hard to do. In truth, it required one to be able to perfectly control one's battle chi and physical strength. And then, one could suddenly unleash all of one's power, like the unending, cascading waters of the waterfall. The power that erupted from a blow such as this was extremely great. This was the principle underneath Linley's Thunderbolt technique. But this was easier said than done. It required an extremely solid grasp of the basics. If one didn't have enough control over one's strength and battle chi, even after one understood the principles of this technique, one still wouldn't be able to utilize it. As powerful as that? Boss, is this the most powerful way to use the heavy sword? Bei said in surprise. Laughing, Linley shook his head. Not even close. Based on the information contained within my clan's records, the way of using heavy weapons can be described as having 3 levels. The first is to master and perfect the basics. The second is to be able to wield something heavy as though it were light. And the third is known as impose. Impose? Bei was a bit confused. What is that? I don't know either. Linley shook his head. After all, my clan's records, aside from the secret Dragon Blood Manual, primarily consists of general descriptions of the history of my clan and some stories of my ancestors. With regards to that ancestor who was able to wield something heavy as though it were light, there were only a few lines describing his power. That record also mentioned that the third level was impose, but what exactly impose is, it didn't describe in detail, so I don't know either. Linley didn't understand. Could impose be referring to an imposing manner? But when wielding the adamantine heavy sword, how much could an imposing manner possibly add to attack power? I haven't had that moment of enlightenment yet. No way to understand it. Linley shook his head. Linley knew very well that he had not yet in fact mastered this level of using something heavy as though it were light. Because the most important part of the Thunderbolt technique was to suddenly release all of the power available at the last moment. How would one further increase the power of this technique? Right now, Linley was suddenly releasing all of his strength and battle chi in a brute force manner, but Linley knew that this was a stupid, crude method. Pity that there's no signposts on the path of training. Linley chuckled, then ceased his idle speculations. Deep autumn. The prime, virgin forests of the mountain range of magical beasts were covered with yellowing leaves. This was the late autumn of year 10,001 of the Yuan calendar. Linley had already entered the mountain range of magical beasts for more than a year and a half, but he had only traveled 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers thus far. He spent most of every day in training, progressing only a few dozen kilometers at most in his journey. Late at night, not a sound could be heard. Within the central areas of the mountain range of magical beasts, beneath a giant tree which would take 5 or 6 men linking hands to embrace the trunks of, Linley was quietly sitting cross-legged in the meditative trance. Slowly, the skies began to brighten. Linley opened his eyes, a hint of a smile on his face. The light, pure dawn wind was blowing. Several leaves slowly spun about and fell down. Watching these leaves fall, Linley was silent. Boss? Bei casually opened his eyes. Questioningly, he said, "You woke up? Why didn't you wake me?" Actually, every day, when Linley woke up, Bei would wake up as well. But every day, Bei would wait for Linley to wake him up before he would be willing to open his eyes. Today, though, Linley hadn't called him. Bei, I seem to have made a breakthrough. Linley suddenly said mentally to Bei. A breakthrough? Bei immediately jumped to his feet. He asked with excitement, "What sort of breakthrough have you had?" Linley laughed. "My spiritual energy has finally reached the level of a magus of the 8th rank. A magus of the 8th rank?" Bei immediately yelped in surprise. That winter, when he was 16 years old, Linley had crafted the sculpture Awakening from the Dream, and the rapid improvement he had gained over those 10 days and 10 nights had resulted in Linley's spiritual energy strengthening tenfold, arriving at the level of spiritual power possessed by a late-stage magus of the 7th rank. He was 16 years old that winter, and already at the late-stage 7th rank. From then until now, 3 years had passed. While he had been at Fenley City, Linley's spiritual energy hadn't improved that fast, and based on that rate of improvement, Linley probably would have needed 5 or 6 years to advance from the late stage of the 7th rank to the 8th rank. But this year in the mountain range of magical beasts, Linley had totally submerged himself into nature, and each time he had engaged in stone sculpting, he had been so natural and unrestrained. His rate of improvement in spiritual energy was quite noticeable. Right now, Linley's spiritual energy finally reached the 8th rank as a magus. "Boss, how powerful are spells of the 8th rank?" Bei said curiously. "You'll find out if you are willing to give it a try." A hint of a smile was on Linley's face. Bebe stared at him, then said proudly, "Come. I, Bebe, am not afraid of magical beasts of the 8th rank, much less a spell of the 8th rank." Linley immediately began to chant the words to a spell. Shortly afterwards, a large amount of earth elemental essence began to rapidly solidify and condense near Linley. The mage force in Linley's body, as well, was beginning to rouse. Whoosh! A wind suddenly arose in front of Linley, catching and tossing up all the fallen leaves around him. An angry howl could suddenly be heard, as an earth-colored, 3-meter-tall wolf suddenly appeared in front of Linley. This massive wolf was 3 meters tall and 10 meters long. All the muscles on its body seemed as tough and gnarled as steel, and its 4 limbs were filled with power. Earth-style spell of the 8th rank, the Howling World Wolf. Ho-ho-ho-ho! The Howling World Wolf let out an enraged snarl, then charged at Bebe, but Bebe only playfully stood there with confidence, staring at the Howling World Wolf. Swish! Suddenly, an earthen spear array erupted from the ground beneath Bebe. Whoa! Bebe let out a cry of surprise, leaping into the air. The earthen spear array hadn't managed to hurt Bebe in the slightest, but at this time, the Howling World Wolf had arrived next to him. Bebe immediately let out a shrill screech, and his body suddenly enlarged. Ho-ho-ho-ho-ho! Fangs bared and maw bloody, the Howling World Wolf bit down at Bebe, while Bebe also bit angrily at the Howling World Wolf. With a crunch sound, Bebe ripped apart the throat of the Howling World Wolf. But the Howling World Wolf didn't seem to be hurt at all as it slashed at Bebe with his fierce claws. Whap! Bebe was knocked flying, smashing against the ground, creating a minor crater. Bebe immediately crawled out, staring angrily at the Howling World Wolf. Just then, the Howling World Wolf had carried a tremendous amount of power in its claws. Bebe, this Howling World Wolf isn't a magical beast. It's an earth element construct, totally composed of mage force and elemental essence. It has no vital weak points. Linley's voice rang out playfully. Bebe instantly understood. To a construct created solely from mage force and elemental essence, whether you bit it on the tail or at the throat, there really was no difference in terms of damage done. Shkree! Bebe was truly furious now. Transforming into a black blur, he flew at the Howling World Wolf, which ripped towards Bebe with its fangs. But Bebe dodged its attack, and then raked the Howling World Wolf with his claws. In the blink of an eye, Bebe had raked the Howling World Wolf nearly 100 times, forcibly bringing his opponent to the breaking point. Bam! The Howling World Wolf's body suddenly began to grow brighter, and then the blink of an eye, it exploded. Bebe was knocked flying by the force of the explosion, smashing hard against a nearby tree, snapping the tree in half, then falling to the ground. Bebe, what do you think? Linley knew exactly how powerful Bebe was. This bit of offensive force wasn't enough to hurt Bebe. Bebe quickly ran over to him. In a wounded voice, he said, "Boss, that Howling World Wolf's offensive attacks weren't lower than an ordinary magical beast of the 8th rank. And it doesn't have any weaknesses either. What a freak! Even when it was about to die, it engaged in a suicidal explosion. When its body was about to collapse, a construct formed from mage force and elemental essence would naturally explode. A dual-element magus of the 8th rank. Now, even in human form, Linley would still be considered a truly formidable person. The power of 8th rank spells was very astonishing. For example, the Brutal Tornado Wind style spell. This Brutal Tornado spell could easily annihilate an army of thousands of soldiers. In truth, even the attack of the Howling World Wolf would destroy most small armies. The Howling World Wolf possessed astonishing defensive powers. Only a freak like Bebe would be capable of so easily penetrating the Howling World Wolf's defense. The Howling World Wolf was extremely fast and possessed astonishing defensive powers. And, it had no weak points. One could imagine how much havoc it would wreak upon an army. To a kingdom, a magus of the 8th rank is more important than an army with 10,000 soldiers. Linley understood this logic. And magi of the 9th rank, in turn, were more important than an army of 100,000 soldiers. As for saint-level grand magi, they were more important than an army of 1,000,000 soldiers. By casting a single forbidden spell, annihilating tempest, an entire army of 1,000,000 soldiers would instantly be destroyed. Linley's elemental essence affinity was exceptional. Naturally, he didn't need too much time to refine more mage force. Given the additional support provided by the straight chisel school of sculpting, Linley didn't need to spend too much time training himself as a magus. And since he could dragon form now, the speed of his training as a warrior was many times faster than before as well. His adamantine heavy sword in hand, Linley was walking atop a large mountain. He casually swung and chopped the adamantine heavy sword in every direction. Whap! Slap! Every movement was very natural and graceful. But whenever the adamantine heavy sword touched any boulders, the boulders would immediately shatter. Either they would shatter into dozens of pieces, or they would explode, or they would turn to dust. Linley constantly tested himself and tested out how to have his thunderbolt technique release more power. How to, using the same amount of battle chi, increase the effectiveness of his attacks. Whew! Sensing that he had used up over half of his dragon blood battle chi, Linley immediately sheathed his adamantine heavy blade. With a flip of his hand, blood violet appeared in his grasp. Linley immediately began to leap about, the blood violet flexible sword in his hands flashing every which way gracefully. The strength of the blood violet sword lay in its speed and its ability to attack unpredictably. Swoosh! The blood violet sword slashed in the direction of a small nearby tree. Halfway there, though, blood violet suddenly curved like a serpent, and in a flash, it wrapped itself around the tree. With another violet flash, the tree was cut in half. With a quiver, the blood violet sword suddenly became straight again. Swish! The blood violet sword stabbed forward. Its sharp edge wreathed with a greenish-black light, the sword easily plunged straight into a nearby stone wall. HRM? Linley suddenly frowned, pulling out blood violet. He stared at the blood violet sword suspiciously. Inside the sword, what in the world? Just then, Linley had been focusing his spiritual energy on blood violet, controlling its fluctuations and contortions. As he had done so, he suddenly had discovered an aura that made his heart tremble with fear. Can it be that? Linley's heart suddenly clenched. Previously, when he had been in that dangerous situation in the Radiant Temple, the Coiling Dragon ring had emitted a tremendously powerful burst of power. This blood violet flexible sword was also a divine artifact, but it wasn't as powerful as Linley had thought it would be. Linley had always been wondering if there was some secret contained within this blood violet flexible sword. Linley immediately focused his spiritual energy inside blood violet, carefully probing it from within. In the past, Linley also tried to do this before he had reached the 8th rank as a magus, but he hadn't been able to find anything. But now, he was a magus of the 8th rank. HRM? Linley's spiritual energy finally seemed to detect something. A bloodthirsty, crazed aura suddenly came into contact with Linley's spiritual energy. Linley suddenly seemed to see a boundless sea of blood. Countless corpses. An endless number of bones. That crazed, bloodthirsty, violent aura directly invaded Linley's spiritual energy, and then, as fast as lightning, it began to pervade Linley's very soul. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 3, A Slaughter. That endless sea of blood was filled with countless white skeletons, and all sorts of different corpses. Some of the corpses belonged to 10-meter-tall giants that were covered in scales with 2 horns sprouting from their heads. Others had white skeletons that glimmered with a faint gold color. Ah! Linley's eyes began to turn red, as he suddenly began to emit a terrifying, baleful aura. That baleful aura somehow seemed to take physical form as a faint, bloody mist began to emanate from around Linley's body. And surrounded by that baleful aura, Linley seemed like he was a fiendish god. Bay, not too far away from Linley, naturally could feel that oppressive, baleful aura. Shocked, all the fur on Bebe's body stood straight up, and Bebe could clearly feel that all of his muscles were quivering, and his blood was pumping faster. Even his claws were shaking, not entirely under his own control. Terror. Terror the likes of which he had never felt before. Boss, what's going on? Bebe said frantically. Right now, Linley was still in control of himself. Only, after being pervaded by that baleful aura, Linley felt a powerful desire to go out and kill. This blood violet is? Linley forcibly suppressed his desire to kill, lowering his head to stare at the sword. Linley could see that in his hands, blood violet was glowing with a devilish red light that flowed, as though blood was flowing on and through it. The entire blood violet sword was shuddering slightly. Linley could feel the intense desire of blood violet to kill. Kill unceasingly. But right now, the more strongly Linley tried to suppress the urge to kill, the more powerful that urge grew. Linley's eyes began to turn more and more red. Ah! Linley let out a wild howl. As though he had transformed into a tornado of movement, Linley ran down the mountain. In his hand, blood violet was flashing everywhere like lightning. Every place Linley passed by, the trees and the stones were all transformed into rubble and debris. Seeing Linley's wild charge, Bebe stood where he was hesitantly for a moment. Bebe had truly been terrified by that baleful aura, the likes of which he had never felt before. But for the sake of his boss. Grr! Bebe ground his teeth, then suddenly flew down the mountain as well. Not too far away from the mountain Linley had been on was a clear pond of water. There was a pack of gold mane mastiffs living next to the pond. Gold mane mastiffs were pack-type creatures, unlike the solitary panthers or tigers. Generally speaking, panthers or tigers might band together for major battles, but in their day-to-day lives, these types of magical beasts would generally live separately. But gold mane mastiffs were different. Gold mane mastiffs had a strong pack mentality and were adept at teamwork. Gold mane mastiffs possessed extremely powerful claws. This pack of gold mane mastiffs numbered over 100. Although gold mane mastiffs were magical beasts of the 8th rank, even your average magical beast of the 9th rank wouldn't dare provoke such a pack. They definitely were a local power to be reckoned with. Right now, these gold mane mastiffs were either lying in rest next to the pond, or casually strolling about, or perhaps frolicking and swimming in the water. This wasn't yet the time for them to hunt for food, and given their strength, they never feared that they would lack for food. But many gold mane mastiffs suddenly looked cautiously up the mountain. Given their alert senses, they could easily sense that something living was moving towards them at high speed. The gold mane mastiffs which had been lying down all stood up, staring coldly at this creature which was moving towards them. Gold mane mastiffs were 3 meters tall and 6 meters long. Their entire bodies were covered with golden fur, and they seemed lion-like. But their eyes radiated a strange golden glow. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr finally saw the creature which was provoking them. It was a human wielding a devilish violet sword whose body was wrapped up with a red light. These extremely intelligent gold mane mastiffs suddenly felt at ease again. It was just a human. Unless this human was at the saint level, he wouldn't be able to do anything to them. But suddenly, when the human drew close enough for that red mist to cover them, all of the gold mane mastiffs suddenly felt terrified like never before. This terrifying aura was far more powerful than even the aura of a saint-level magical beast. Under this oppressive, baleful aura, all of the gold mane mastiffs felt as though their limbs were no longer under their own control, and one after another knelt down in terror as they lowered their proud heads. Blood, blood. Linley was doing his best to remain clear-minded, but he could feel the intense desire of Blood Violet to drink blood. After having roused the baleful aura contained within Blood Violet had to be sated by drinking enough blood. Swish! Transforming into a violet ray of light, Blood Violet passed straight through the neck of one of the gold mane mastiffs. A meter-high mastiff head flew off, Linley's speed was simply too fast. No. Accurately speaking, Blood Violet's killing speed was too fast. Only after it had chopped through 8 gold mane mastiffs' heads did the first head fly off. And only now did the remaining gold mane mastiffs, who had all been kneeling in terror, wake to their senses. Howl! Nearby, the largest of the gold mane mastiffs forced itself to stand up, then raised his head up and began howling angrily. But despite this, its limbs were still trembling, and its eyes were still filled with disbelieving fear. Their intelligence, however, was very high. These gold mane mastiffs all knew that this human emitting this terrifying aura was going to kill them all. Even though they were terrified, they were still going to resist. Having drank so much fresh blood, Blood Violet emitted a joyful sound. Die! Die! The more he killed, the more Linley felt as though the desire to kill was consuming him. Right now, the only desire he had was to kill. The remaining 100 or so gold mane mastiffs didn't dare to directly face Linley. All of them turned tail and ran. Swish! Linley's blood violet sword chopped towards the head of another gold mane mastiff. Knowing that it wasn't going to be able to flee, this gold mane mastiff turned back and opened its mouth, biting down at Linley while breathing flames from its mouth. Instinctively, Linley's body became covered by his azure blackish dragon blood battle chi, which protected him and blocked the flame breath of this gold mane mastiff. When the violet sword drew close to the gold mane mastiff's head, the gold mane mastiff could clearly sense that the baleful aura this violet sword was emitting was now several times stronger than before. This terror, the likes of which it had never felt before, caused its limbs to go soft. Even the energy being generated by the magi sight core in its body had come to a halt, and it just stood there, allowing the violet sword to cut its head off. Surrounded by a baleful aura that had taken physical form, Linley constantly chased after and killed one gold mane mastiff after another. These local tyrants, the gold mane mastiffs, were now truly panicked. They had no idea where this fiendish god had come from. That baleful aura was now so strong that even their bodily functions were being affected. Even if they wanted to fight, their bodies were no longer under their total control. Blood sprayed everywhere. Hacked limbs and severed heads flew everywhere. In the blink of an eye, 30 gold mane mastiffs had died on the spot. Boss! Boss! Bei called out frantically. Bei could sense the state which Linley was currently in. He was terrified that in the future, Linley would have permanently transformed into a constantly slaughtering madman. Slowly, Linley's form slowed its movements. Bei! I'm fine. Linley's voice rang out in Bei's mind. Bei immediately ran over. Bei could clearly see Linley's bare upper body, his forehead covered in sweat, and that faint layer of red on his skin. Right now, Linley's eyes were closed, and his chest was rising and falling like a blacksmith's bellows. Whew! Letting out a long breath, Linley finally opened his eyes. Linley's eyes had now returned to their normal clarity. Boss, ya what happened to you? Bei said worriedly. With a hint of lingering fear, Linley looked at the blood violet sword in his hands. Right now, Linley was very certain that this blood violet sword had been a slaughterer's sword, and that it had killed an extraordinarily high number of people. Linley even suspected that the endless sea of blood, bones, and corpses that he had sensed earlier had all been the handiwork of Blood Violet. But those corpses Linley didn't even recognize most of them, or what races they belonged to. Is there a race of humans with the heads of bulls? Can it be that these are the legendary minotaurs from other planes? Linley thought to himself questioningly. From his books, Linley had seen references to minotaurs before, but there were no such creatures in the Yulon continent. But many of the other corpses, Linley had never seen or heard of, even in the books and records he had read. For example, those massive giant creatures that were 10 meters tall, covered with thick black scales, and had 2 massive horns sprouting from their foreheads. The aura emanating from their corpses alone filled Linley with dread. Linley had the feeling that those massive creatures definitely were not one whit weaker than some of the saint-level magical beasts he had seen. But there were innumerable numbers of corpses of those giant creatures. It was true. Those corpses of creatures which were no weaker than saint-level magical beasts could be seen everywhere in that boundless sea of blood. Who was the previous owner of this blood-violet sword? He actually killed this many powerful combatants. Linley was secretly shocked. He was absolutely certain that this sword definitely came from one of the higher planes, because the Yulon continent simply never had this many powerful combatants. As he thought back to how he had originally acquired blood violet, Linley understood something. This blood violet god's word truly did not originate from the Yulon continent. With the thought, Linley absorbed blood violet into his interspatial ring. Whew! Unless it is absolutely necessary, I definitely cannot activate the baleful aura hidden within this blood violet sword again. Linley had already made up his mind about this. At this time, Bebe leaped onto Linley's shoulders. "Boss! What just happened?" Bebe asked. Linley laughed as he looked at Bebe. "Bebe, do you remember how we discovered that magical formation back when we were in the Foggy Valley? At that time, Grandpa Doring had said that the mysterious magical formation was even more complicated and mysterious than saint-level magical formations. And blood violet was used to support that magical formation. At that time, we suspected that blood violet wasn't as simple a sword as it appeared to be. And indeed, that is the case." Bebe immediately listened alertly. This blood violet god's word most likely has experienced endless amounts of murder and slaughter, and also killed many powerful combatants, including those of the saint level, or even higher. And precisely because that is the case, within this blood violet sword there is a terrifyingly powerful baleful aura. Once it has been activated and agitated, even those gold mane mastiffs quaked and knelt down in fear. But despite having its positives, it also has its negatives. Once it's been activated, blood violet absolutely must be fed blood. Otherwise, blood violet will refuse to obey my intentions and won't obediently go into my interspatial ring. Bebe nodded. "Boss, this blood violet sword really is terrifying." Just then, that baleful aura even made me tremble with fear as well, and my limbs were shaking too. In a situation like that, even though I'm a magical beast of the 9th rank, I perhaps would have only been able to use half of my power. Bebe said honestly. As for magical beasts of the 8th rank, when oppressed by that baleful aura, they probably wouldn't even be able to use 1/10 of their power. When the baleful aura within blood violet was activated, the opponent's own power would be impacted and drop. If even a magical beast of the 9th rank would be influenced so dramatically, one could easily imagine how useful this sword would prove to be in battle. But being possessed by that cruel, vicious, wild, murdering urge really is not a good feeling. Once the baleful aura is activated, I absolutely must kill a large number of living creatures before that wild, cruel, murdering urge is sated. Linley had just experienced that urge, so he knew full well what it was like. Unless it was absolutely necessary, it was best not to activate that baleful aura. "All right, Bebe. Let's collect the Magi Sight cores and continue." Magi Sight cores? Wow, so many! Bebe excitedly went to collect the Magi Sight cores. After collecting the cores of those several dozen gold mane mastiffs, Linley and Bebe continued on their journey, letting the corpses of the gold mane mastiffs remain there. In the mountain range of magical beasts, once dead, even the most powerful of magical beasts would be no more than food for other animals. Their discovery of this secret contained within blood violet was nothing more but a side event. Linley continued his lifestyle of training. Every day, he would travel around 10 kilometers, with most of his time spent training. As far as how the heavy sword was meant to be used, almost every day, Linley would have a new insight. Linley was totally immersed in that wondrous feeling of training and improving. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 4, The Black Shadow. The first snow of that winter was a major one. Many places in the mountain range of magical beasts were covered with snow as well. Various tracks could be seen clearly, some belonging to humans, and as well as magical beasts of various sizes. What a large blizzard! Linley still wore only those ragged hemp cloth pants, his upper body bare. Although the temperature was so cold that even rapidly flowing water would freeze, Linley didn't fear it in the slightest. Barefooted, Linley continued to stride forward. "Boss, it should almost be the time of the Yulon festival, right?" Bei guessed. After having been in the mountain range of magical beasts for so long, Linley didn't even have a rough idea of what day it was. Although Linley did have a pocket watch, the watch was only capable of keeping simple time, and didn't track dates. "Should be around that time." Linley nodded. After having been in the mountain range of magical beasts for around 2 years, Linley's prowess as a warrior had increased at a fairly rapid rate. He was at the peak stage of the 7th rank now. But in terms of using the heavy sword, his skill in wielding his adamantine heavy sword was immeasurably higher than it was originally. In particular, after becoming a dual-element magus of the 8th rank, when he used his magic and his warrior skills simultaneously, his power was raised to a very high level. HRM? Bei and Linley both turned to look back. Not too far away, 2 sturdy warriors dressed in leather armor and holding weapons were running frantically, seemingly panic-stricken. Seeing that it was other humans, Linley continued on his path. The mountain range of magical beasts had a large number of human experts training within it, and in these past 2 years, Linley had encountered quite a few humans. With respect to the humans in the mountain range of magical beasts, Linley had a simple principle: don't irritate others. After all, plenty of people were here with the intention of taking the Magi-Sight crystals in other people's bags for themselves. Because Linley had an interspatial ring, he didn't have to carry his bag with him. Thus, there were very few people who had the desire to act against Linley. "Wait, wait!" A frantic shout from behind. But Linley didn't pay them any mind at all, continuing to walk forward. Those 2 people ran quite fast, and they quickly overtook Linley. When they drew near, Linley immediately halted and turned around. "What do you want?" Linley stared coldly at those 2 men. Linley could tell that these 2 were not weak. However, a human's level of power was hard to judge at a glance. Linley was fairly cautious in dealing with these 2. "Us?" The 2 sturdily built men exchanged glances, and then forced out awkward smiles towards Linley. One of them, a one-eyed bald man, said apologetically, "We don't have any bad intentions. Only, the core regions of the mountain range of magical beasts are too dangerous. We 2 brothers would like to travel with you, friend. That way, we can help each other out. Wouldn't that be safer?" The other bald man started momentarily, then quickly nodded repeatedly. "Right. The core region is very dangerous. If we travel together, we can help each other out. How about this? Once we all leave the core regions and leave the mountain range of magical beasts, we'll go our own ways." "Not interested." Linley frowned. Turning back, he continued on his journey forward. Linley wasn't that easily fooled youngster of the past. He could tell that these 2 were clearly lying. Helping each other out in the mountain range of magical beasts? What a joke! These 2 people definitely didn't have any good intentions in wanting to travel with him. Linley didn't want to cause any trouble, and couldn't be bothered to kill these 2 either. Naturally, he wouldn't want them to travel with him. Seeing how bluntly Linley refused and continued on his journey, these 2 bald men glanced at each other. Hesitating only slightly, they immediately rushed over again. "Wait, friend, please wait." The 2 bald men caught up again. Linley couldn't help but frown as he turned his head to stare coldly at these 2. The 2 men looked awkwardly at Linley. The one-eyed man said apologetically, "I'm so very sorry, but we 2 really would like to travel alongside you. Don't worry, once we leave this place, we'll definitely show gratitude to you." Linley glanced at each man. "If you want to follow, then follow," Linley said calmly. After having been in the mountain range of magical beasts for so long, Linley was quite experienced now. If these two insisted on traveling with him, then let them. Linley was confident in his own ability to deal with them. After all, Linley had Bebe with him as well, on his shoulders. "Thank you, thank you," those two bald men said gratefully. Immediately, those two moved together to walk alongside Linley. At the same time, they constantly scanned the area around them, a hint of dread in their eyes. "Friend, we hail from the O'Brien Empire's Southwest District Administrative Province. Where are you from?" The one-eyed bald man seemed to want to have more friendly relations with Linley. Linley's eyebrows twitched. The O'Brien Empire? Linley knew very well that if he were to cut directly through the mountain range of magical beasts, he would be able to arrive in the territory of the O'Brien Empire quite quickly. Why so many questions? Linley glanced at the man. "If you want to follow, then follow. Don't make a sound." All right, all right." The one-eyed bald man nodded repeatedly. They could tell that Linley definitely was no ordinary person. It wasn't too strange for him to be only wearing hemp cloth pants in the winter, but what was quite amazing was that a human in the core region of the mountain range of magical beasts could be so calm and unhurried. It was as though this dangerous region was nothing more than a flower garden to him. "Big brother." The bald man pulled at the arm of the other, one-eyed bald man. In a low voice, he said, "Big brother, do you think we'll be able to preserve our lives?" The one-eyed bald man looked at their surroundings in fear, then said in a low voice, "Don't overthink things. For now, let's follow this mysterious fellow. If we follow him, we might have a chance." "Right." The first bald man nodded. But in his heart, he still felt fearful. Up ahead in front of them, Linley was walking very naturally. Linley noticed that the two men behind him were whispering, but Linley had a feeling that these two men were not the type to try and act against him. After a while, Linley took a rest. Each day, Linley would only travel 10 kilometers. The rest of his time was spent in training. The two men behind him became truly frantic when Linley rested so soon. "Why have you stopped?" the one-eyed bald man said frantically. "HRM?" Linley glanced unhappily at the two men. The younger man hurriedly laughed. "Milord, this is still the core regions. Wouldn't it be better for us to hurry out of the core regions before resting?" Linley frowned, then spoke. "Don't annoy me. If you want to follow me, then follow. If you want to go, then go. As for me, if I want to stop, I'll stop. If you keep kicking up such a fuss, then don't blame me if I kill you both." The two bald men exchanged glances, then laughed awkwardly. Sorry." The two immediately retreated slightly, no longer daring to disturb Linley. These two are acting in a strange way. Linley glanced at these two men. These two men said that they wanted to leave the mountain range of magical beasts, but they insisted on following him. If he didn't leave, they wouldn't leave either. Why did they insist on following him? He didn't know these two men at all. Linley sat down cross-legged, placing the adamantine heavy sword across his legs. But just at this moment, Linley suddenly felt a tinge of fear in his heart. Swish! Linley suddenly turned his head. A black shadow suddenly flashed in front of him, then disappeared. Ah! Ah! From far away, a terrified cry could be heard, but after 2 or 3 cries, it fell silent. Only now did Linley realize that of the two bald men, only one was left now. The one remaining was the one-eyed bald man. As for his younger brother, the man was gone now. Next to the man, there was a pool of blood. Ah! Ah! No, no! The one-eyed bald man seemed to have suffered some sort of unspeakable shock, as he began to scream. Linley solemnly rose to his feet, and Bebe began to grow cautious as well. "Boss, that creature is extremely fast." Bebe mentally spoke solemnly. "We've been in the mountain range of magical beasts for a very long time. This is the fastest creature we've encountered yet. I couldn't even clearly see if it was a man or a magical beast. Linley hadn't been able to see it clearly either. That creature's speed was simply too fast. In terms of movement speed, it was even a bit faster than Bebe. What exactly was that? Bebe has entered the 9th rank now, and we have spent quite some time here in the mountain range of magical beasts. But in terms of speed, we've never met anything that was faster than Bebe. Linley began to feel suspicious. Bebe's speed was his greatest strength. It was hard to find a magical beast able to outspeed Bebe, even amongst the 9th rank. What was that strange creature? Could it have been a saint-level creature? Linley felt a slight shock. Saint-level magical beasts would naturally be fast. It would make sense for it to be faster than Linley. Linley immediately turned his head to stare at the one-eyed bald man. Right now, the eyes of the one-eyed bald man were filled with fear, and his mouth was continuously muttering something. Every so often, he would look around in fear, as though in terror of being attacked again. Ah! Feeling himself being grabbed, the one-eyed bald man couldn't help but scream in terror. But when he came to his senses and looked behind himself, he saw that it was Linley who had grabbed him by his clothes. Speak! What is going on? Linley stared at him accusingly. Otherwise, I'll abandon you here and travel by myself. No, no, don't abandon me. The one-eyed bald man directly fell to his knees. Ill talk. Ill talk. Seeing this, Linley couldn't help but frown. He had heard long ago that the O'Brien Empire was a major military power. The people of the O'Brien Empire deeply venerated the war god, and thus many of the citizens of the empire would train in the path of the warrior. Powerful warriors were extremely proud. For this bald man to be able to enter the core region of the mountain range of magical beasts, he clearly wasn't weak either. Even if he wasn't a warrior of the 7th rank, he must be a warrior of the 6th rank at least. But the one-eyed bald man had just fallen to his knees, showing no spine at all. "My lord, you don't know how terrible these recent days have been. They've been like a terrible, terrible dream." The one-eyed bald man's eyes were beginning to fill with tears. Linley immediately began to listen closely. This time, myself, my younger brother, my wife, and a group of friends formed a squad to enter the mountain range of magical beasts and begin our training. We hoped to acquire some magi sight cores as well. To people like us, who had entered the mountain range of magical beasts for more than 5 times, this was an ordinary trip. But we didn't expect. The bald man's entire body was trembling. On the 3rd day after we entered the mountain range of magical beasts, just as we entered the inner regions, we entered a nightmare. This squad of mine had 6 warriors of the 7th rank, and 2 magi of the 6th rank. As long as we stayed within the inner regions of the mountain range of magical beasts, there shouldn't have been any danger. But who would have thought that we would encounter a terrifying monster? Monster? Linley frowned. The first time we encountered it, it immediately ambushed us, killing one of my good friends, just like how it acted just now. The one-eyed bald man's entire body was shaking. I was furious, because this monster was simply too fast. We couldn't even tell what it looked like. Only after hearing our friends' miserable cries did we know that we were under attack. And then, seeing the blood on the ground, we realized that our friend was most likely dead. At the time, we all believed that magical beast was only able to attack from ambush, and didn't dare to face us directly. Clearly, it wasn't that strong. In our fury, we even thought about killing it to gain vengeance. But at first, we couldn't find the monster. The one-eyed bald man took a deep breath, calming his agitated heart before continuing. But that very night, shortly after we finished dinner, the monster came again. As he spoke, the lone eye of the man opened wide. Clearly he was very nervous. This time, like the previous time, that monster ambushed and carried off one of our magi. But this time, it carried the magus only a few dozen meters away before beginning to eat him. Right in front of us, the monster began eating our squad's magus. What did this monster look like? Linley immediately asked. It looked like a panther whose body was almost totally pitch black. The one-eyed bald man said. Totally pitch black body? The 8th-ranked magical beast, Black Striped Panther? But saying this, Linley found that he didn't believe it. A magical beast of the 8th rank couldn't possibly reach such an astonishing speed. Not even a panther, a land-based magical beast of incredible speed. It wasn't a black striped panther. Our squad was fairly experienced, and we know that black striped panthers are covered in extremely dense straight black stripes, while this monster's body was covered in curved black stripes that looked like a decorative pattern. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 5, The Mysterious Black Panther. Linley was beginning to frown. He, too, had never heard of such a creature. There were several types of panther-type magical beasts, but one which was entirely pitch black and covered with dense black wavy lines which formed decorative patterns, was totally unheard of. Generally speaking, creatures that one had never heard of must not be underestimated. The one-eyed bald man said, that monster decided to eat the meat on the face and the legs of our magus right in front of us, one large bite at a time. Watching this, we were all furious, and we instantly charged forward to attack it. However, the bald man shook his head. What we didn't expect was that the monster was far too powerful. We originally thought that the reason it attacked from ambush, then slipped away was because it was weak. However, when our entire group attacked it, it only heavily wounded us. Heavily wounded? Linley questioned suspiciously. Right. The one-eyed bald man said in fear and anger. That monster definitely was capable of killing us all, but it didn't. It only heavily wounded us. We originally thought that we still had a chance of living, only to find that the monster was focused on us now. Each day, it would take away 2 of our people. Sometimes, it would take them away, while other times, it would just eat our friends not too far away from us. Linley's heart trembled. He knew that magical beasts were highly intelligent. The magical beast that this one-eyed bald man had encountered clearly was extremely powerful and extremely intelligent. Most likely, this magical beast was a perverted creature. We wanted to flee back, but each time we tried to head away from and out of the mountain range of magical beasts, that monster would come again and heavily injure us again. That one-eyed bald man laughed bitterly. We simply weren't able to escape the mountain range of magical beasts. Each day, that monster would come and take away 1 or 2 people. In the blink of an eye, our 12-person squad only had 6 left. Having already seen this happen several times, my wife finally broke down mentally when the monster once again began to eat our friends in front of us. She begged me to kill her. The one-eyed bald man laughed bitterly. You have no idea the terror we felt after those 3 days. All of us were at the point of collapse. My wife was fairly weak, even weaker than me. Faced with this terrible choice, in the end, I finally made the choice to put my wife out of her misery. You killed your wife? Linley frowned. Yes. I killed her with my own hands. The one-eyed bald man said painfully. But the very day I killed my wife, we encountered several other people, one of whom was a major figure in our southwest administrative province. A combatant of the 9th rank named Pruitt. We had been at the brink of despair and collapse. I killed my own wife, but right afterwards, a combatant of the 9th rank appeared. How do you think I felt? The one-eyed bald man's entire body was shaking. I almost went mad. Truly. I almost killed myself, I was in such pain. Linley could totally imagine how, when overcome by despair and mentally broken down, one would personally kill one's wife, so as to not allow one's wife to suffer the fate of being eaten alive, 1 bite at a time. But then, after killing one's wife, a combatant of the 9th rank appeared? This sort of contrast was definitely capable of driving someone insane. I was filled with pain, but my other friends were very happy, because they knew that we now had a chance. A combatant of the 9th rank. That was someone whom only the saint level would surpass. We told our story to him, and Lord Pruitt immediately promised to dispose of this beast for us. When that monster once more came for us, Lord Pruitt immediately made his move. A strange expression was on the face of that one-eyed bald man. Just one blow. The monster took a blow from Lord Pruitt head on, then smashed Lord Pruitt's head open with a blow from its paws. Linley's heart shook. It was actually able to take a blow from a combatant of the 9th rank head on? Its speed and defense were both incredibly terrifying. A monster like this definitely couldn't be underestimated. This time, the monster was extremely excited. Right before our very eyes, it suddenly transformed, increasing in size from 2 meters tall to nearly 5 meters tall and 10 meters long. It devoured Lord Pruitt with one gulp. The one-eyed bald man said in terror. The look on Linley's face changed. Able to change its size? Linley was truly shocked. All saint-level magical beasts were capable of changing their size. They could easily make themselves much larger or much smaller. But of course, a very small number of magical beasts of the 9th rank with extremely high natural talent could do this as well. For example, Bebe was capable of changing his size slightly. In other words, this magical beast was either a saint-level magical beast, or an extremely talented magical beast of the 9th rank. It wouldn't be a saint level, would it? Linley's heart was somewhat unsettled. Although Linley was very self-confident, he still didn't have any hopes of dealing with a saint-level magical beast at all. That one-eyed bald man laughed painfully. Just like that, the monster continued to torment us, eating 2 of us each day. In the end, only my younger brother and I were left. We continued to flee along the core regions, hoping in vain that this monster would engage in battle with some other powerful magical beast, giving us a chance to flee. But clearly, no magical beasts were capable of stopping that monster. Linley nodded. He now totally understood. But this one-eyed bald man didn't have any good intentions towards Linley, insisting on following Linley. Clearly, this was out of the hopes that Linley would protect him. Acting like this showed that this man didn't care about whether Linley lived or died at all. The expression on Linley's face grew hard. "Milord, two had no other choices." The one-eyed bald man knew what Linley was thinking. He hurriedly said, "I have kids. My second brother had kids as well. We didn't want to die." "Do you think I want to die?" Linley said coldly. Just based on what that one-eyed bald man had said, Linley had a general sense of how powerful this monster was. It was faster than Bebe, and wasn't hurt from a sword blow from a combatant of the 9th rank. Just based on these 2 points, Linley couldn't help but feel nervous. What's more, that was only the power that had been revealed. What was the true level of power possessed by this monster? Was it a saint-level magical beast? Linley couldn't be certain. If it was a saint level of magical beast, then even if he and Bebe joined forces, they still wouldn't be a match at all. "You didn't want to die, so you pulled us underwater as well?" Linley felt extremely dissatisfied. "Bebe, let's go." Linley immediately sped up his footsteps, heading forward. The one-eyed bald man continued to follow Linley. Linley couldn't help but turn his head and stare at him coldly. This bastard was still following? Clearly, that monster had its mind set on that one-eyed bald man. "Milord, you please save me." The one-eyed bald man's eyes were filled with a beseeching look. But his actions only made Linley dislike him more and more. This man was selfish, only caring about himself. He didn't care about others at all. Even a 9th rank combatant died. "Do you think I'm a saint-level combatant?" Linley suddenly drew the adamantine heavy sword from his back, and the one-eyed bald man was frightened into beating a hasty retreat. "If you continue to follow me, then don't blame me for being merciless to you," Linley said coldly. Linley was now a peak stage warrior of the 7th rank, and a middle stage warrior of the 9th rank in dragon form. Although he was somewhat more powerful than when he was in Hess City, Linley was only capable of fighting that warrior of the 9th rank, Kaiser, to a draw. Right now, it would be very difficult for Linley to be able to kill a combatant of the 9th rank in one blow. But that monster had easily done just that, killing a 9th ranked combatant. Risking his own life for a person he didn't even know? Was that worth it? Linley returned his adamantine heavy sword to its sheath, then left by himself. The one-eyed bald man just stood there, not daring to follow. He only stared with despair and hatred at Linley's back. Ah! After walking less than 100 meters, an agonized scream came from behind him. Linley immediately turned to look back. On the snow ground, there was a black panther that was 2 meters tall and nearly 4 meters long. The black panther had, in its maws, the body of that one-eyed bald man. Save me! The one-eyed bald man was still alive. Linley's attention was totally focused on the black panther. The black panther's body was covered with a large number of wavy, patterned lines. It was quite beautiful, actually. And right now, that black panther's cold eyes were currently looking at Linley with curiosity. Clearly, the black panther was playing a game. The previous game had just come to an end, and now, Linley had become the next victim in its game. Save me! The one-eyed bald man stared at Linley, begging Linley with his eyes. But that black panther just bit down viciously. With a crunching sound, half of the one-eyed bald man's waist was bitten off, and his intestines began to slide out. The one-eyed bald man spasmed on the ground a few times, not dying right away. The black panther walked forward gracefully, stepping on the one-eyed bald man's chest with its sharp paws. Crunch! The one-eyed bald man's chest caved in, and seconds later he stopped moving. The black panther looked at Linley with interest, and then it began to slowly, gracefully move towards Linley. It must be said that its graceful stride was indeed quite beautiful to behold. Bay! Prepare to ambush him. This time, we're going all out. Linley could tell that this unidentifiable panther-type magical beast now had its eyes set on him. Instead of allowing this creature to ambush him as it pleased, it was better to engage it head-on. Linley drew the adamantine heavy sword from its sheath, staring at the black panther. Linley's body began to transform. Cold, sharp horns erupted from his forehead, while black scales quickly covered his entire body. That sturdy tail erupted from behind him as well, and his knees, elbows, and spine became lined with sharp spikes. In the blink of an eye, Linley had totally dragon-formed. The Black Panther, seeing this human suddenly transform into a strange, human-shaped aberration, couldn't help but be startled. Its sleek, glossy hair immediately rose up in caution. One was a dragon blood warrior. The other, a mysterious panther-type magical beast. Come! Wielding the adamantine heavy sword in his hands, Linley didn't move at all, just standing there on the snowy ground. As stable and unmoving as a mountain. The Black Panther's body began to crouch down slightly. It was gathering its power. Whoosh! His dark golden eyes locked onto the Black Panther. This time Linley was just barely able to see the Black Panther's movements. In the blink of an eye, the Black Panther had crossed the 100 meters distance between them and arrived in front of him. Whap! Moving as fast as lightning, Linley's draconic tail swung at the Black Panther's body. In terms of speed, the attack speed of Linley's tail was actually much faster than the Black Panther's movement speed. The Black Panther was knocked back over 10 meters onto the snowy ground. But immediately upon landing, the Black Panther let out a deep growl as it stared at Linley with its cold eyes. This time, the creature was clearly going to attack at full power. With a leap, the Black Panther charged at incredible speed, so fast as to make one's heart tremble. Linley could clearly tell that there wasn't a single hint of blood on the Black Panther's body. The draconic tail of a middle-stage dragon blood warrior of the 9th rank wasn't able to injure it at all. The adamantine heavy sword of Linley swung downwards, chopping as fast as lightning. Black light seemed to flow off the blade of the adamantine heavy sword. The Black Panther actually dared to swing a paw to directly claw at Linley's adamantine heavy sword. Clang! Linley's adamantine heavy sword was actually deflected to the side by the Black Panther's paw. Slash! The other paw slashed against Linley's arm. On the black scales covering Linley's arm, a rather deep scratch could be seen, and 2 scales had been split open as well. The man and the magical beast had each exchanged a blow. They immediately separated. Growl, growl! Standing in the middle of the snow, the Black Panther stared coldly at Linley. He now saw Linley as a serious opponent. Just now, his attack hadn't been able to totally rip apart that scaled defense and tear off Linley's arm. This made the Black Panther very surprised. Linley stared at the damage done to his scaly armor. Most magical beasts of the 9th rank were not capable of breaching Linley's defense. But just now, that panther had been able to rip 2 scales apart. The Black Panther's body suddenly increased in size, transforming from 2 meters tall to 5, and lengthening to 10 meters as well. That black tail of the panther was waving around like a whip. The panther continued to stare coldly at Linley. Growl! This enormous creature once again charged towards Linley. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 6, Another Transformation. Boss! Bebe's voice rang out in Linley's mind. Holding the adamantine heavy sword with one hand, Linley leapt backwards in an arcing dodging pattern. At the same time, he mentally said, Bebe, don't panic. Let me first have a good fight with this mysterious Black Panther. If I can't beat it, you can make your move against it. You are my secret weapon. Bebe, understanding, rapidly retreated to one side. Right now, Linley had been filled with a growing urge to do battle. Despite having spent this much time in the mountain range of magical beasts, he hadn't yet encountered an opponent who required him to truly use all of his power. Saint-level beasts were too powerful, while Linley could now totally dominate ordinary magical beasts of the 9th rank through his higher speed. Only, this mysterious Black Panther was even faster than Linley. Growl! The enormous Black Panther landed on the ground, cold gaze fixed upon Linley. But Linley only had a hint of a smile on his lips. It increased in size, but no doubt its speed is now slower. Linley could clearly tell that this Black Panther's speed had dropped by 20 to 30 just now. With the support of the wind-style supersonic spell, Linley was totally confident in his ability to deal with it. But Linley also understood something. With greater size came lesser speed, but most likely, the Black Panther's offensive abilities had just greatly increased. Even in its normal form, the Black Panther had been able to rip open 2 of Linley's scales. Linley no longer dared to allow the Black Panther to land any more claw attacks against him. With a swish, that mysterious Black Panther once more pounced towards Linley at high speed, arriving in front of Linley in mere moments. Whoosh! Right at this moment, Linley suddenly slid down on the snow beneath the Black Panther, passing below it while simultaneously stabbing at the Black Panther's chest with his adamantine heavy sword. Clang! Linley's heavy sword once again slammed against the sharp claws of the panther. Although the Black Panther's speed had decreased with its increased size, the attack speed of its paw strikes was still astonishingly fast. Swish! That 7 or 8 meter long Black Panther tail ripped through the air, viciously slashing towards Linley. Linley kicked off powerfully against the ground with his right foot, launching himself towards an enormous nearby tree. As he arrived, Linley kicked viciously against the massive tree with both legs. Crack! The tree was broken in half and fell down, while its dense array of branches also smashed everywhere. With astonishing speed, Linley used the bounce-back force to dive back towards the mysterious Black Panther, while at the same time, gripping the adamantine heavy sword with both hands in a vicious downward stroke against the Black Panther. Slash! The adamantine heavy sword moved so fast that it ripped through the air, creating an ear-piercing, howling sound. But right at this moment, the Black Panther turned its head to stare at Linley, staying there without moving, allowing Linley to strike it at will. Clearly, this Black Panther understood that after having transformed to a larger size, it would no longer be able to rely on its speed to suppress Linley. Swish! The adamantine heavy sword in Linley's hands suddenly seemed to lose all weight and force, floating gracefully downwards at an astonishing speed. The tip of the sword, however, was beginning to tremble. Bam! The adamantine heavy sword collided against the Black Panther's body. A look of surprise appeared in the cold, arrogant eyes of the Black Panther, because this sword blow seemed to have no force behind it at all. Without hesitating in the slightest, it sent its 7 or 8 meter long tail slashing fiercely towards Linley. Thunderbolt! Linley's formerly calm eyes suddenly seemed to spit lightning bolts. The Black Panther suddenly felt as though that adamantine heavy sword which had just touched its back suddenly exploded with a terrifyingly powerful blast of force. The force was like the eruption of a volcano, blasting out power wildly and at high speed. Bam! The Black Panther felt its limbs grow soft, and its body was pressed down by a significant amount. Its glossy black fur suddenly began to ripple like the waves of the sea. Growl! A small amount of blood leaked out from the corner of the Black Panther's mouth. This level of wielding something heavy as though it were light required perfect coordination between physical strength and battle chi. It wasn't just raw, brute force, rather, it was concentrating all of the rushing power and unleashing it at one blow. Although the Black Panther possessed astonishing defensive capabilities, with its fur neutralizing more than half of the offensive power, a significant amount of power still entered its body, causing the Black Panther some internal injuries. Whap! That whip-like black tail of the Black Panther landed viciously on Linley's body, smashing apart the armored scales on Linley's waist and sending Linley flying. Just as Linley was about to smash into the top part of the trunk of another large tree, Linley suddenly stretched out his right hand and plunged his claws into the tree trunk like a grappling hook. Hanging onto the trunk, Linley looked down from his position at the upper trunk of the tree. As I thought. Once it transforms to a large size, its offensive power increases greatly. Linley looked at the shattered scales on his waist and the fresh blood leaking from beneath it. He now understood much more about this mysterious Black Panther. As for its defense, however, it didn't increase that much. When it transformed to a larger size, the Black Panther's defense didn't change much. Its speed dropped, and its attack power increased. It seems as though my Thunderbolt technique is still effective against it. Linley was very satisfied with the effect of his Thunderbolt attack. This Black Panther possessed a terrifyingly powerful defense. Even the explosive power unleashed by Thunderbolt was largely blocked by its extremely tough black fur, and the fur itself seemed to be totally undamaged. If Linley were only to use raw, brute force and battle chi against this Black Panther, he probably wouldn't be able to wound it at all. Time to use my magic. Linley began to mumble the words to a magical incantation. Right now, Linley was hanging around 30 or so meters up above the ground off that tree trunk, while the Black Panther was staring up at him coldly from below. Seeing that Linley didn't come down, this peak stage, highly intelligent magical beast of the 9th rank, came to a snap decision. If you aren't coming down, I'm coming up. Swoosh! That 5-meter tall, enormous Black Panther suddenly flew into the air, leaping directly towards Linley. With its astonishing springing force, it cleared 30 meters with a single bound. Linley's heart was as tranquil as water. Despite seeing the enormous Black Panther fly upwards towards himself, he still continued to chant the words to his spell. Only, he slapped the trunk of the tree with his right hand, sending himself flying upwards at an incline at high speed. The tree which Linley had just slapped instantly split apart by the force of that blow. Crash! The tree toppled to the ground towards the panther. This tree was enormous enough that when it was falling, it took up half of available space. To the physically small Linley, it didn't prove a problem at all, but the enormous panther was forced to slash at it with its paws and rip it in half. Seizing this moment, Linley finally completed the magical incantation he was chanting. Sweesh! On Linley's back, a pair of translucent, blue wings suddenly appeared. Flashing with azure light, the translucent wings seemed extremely beautiful. With a gentle flap of the wings, Linley's body rocketed into the air. Wind-style spell of the 8th rank, Air Wings. Seeing this, the enormous Black Panther instantly howled with fury. It actually pounced once more towards Linley at high speeds, as Linley flew higher. Bam! Although the Black Panther had increased in size, it was still extremely dexterous and agile, capable of leaping dozens of meters at a single bound. Borrowing force against the tree trunk, it continued to leap higher and higher up the trees. But after 5 or 6 leaps, the enormous Black Panther had reached the top of the tallest tree, while right now, Linley flew high above the mountain range of magical beasts with his translucent wings. Now, time for me to thrash you. Linley saw that the enormous Black Panther had already leapt towards him from the top of the tallest tree. But now, with nothing to grab on, the Black Panther had no choice but to allow its body to fall down. Just as its body began to fall. Whoosh! Linley suddenly spread his wings and rocketed downwards at an astonishing speed. Through using the astonishing downward speed granted to him by the Air Wings spell, Linley quickly arrived next to the falling enormous Black Panther. The enormous Black Panther glared angrily at Linley, but in mid-air, it had nothing to latch onto. Hey arg! Linley suddenly activated all of the dragon blood battle chi in his body. Reaching the absolute maximum limit of dragon blood battle chi power in an instant, and with both hands gripped tightly around the adamantine heavy sword, Linley delivered a vicious mid-air chop against the falling Black Panther, which had nowhere to dodge. Clang! The Black Panther's sharp claws once again clashed against the adamantine heavy sword. But Linley only confidently swung his adamantine heavy sword against it again at high speed. At this moment, the dancing adamantine heavy sword in Linley's hands had seemed to become one with the wind, slashing down more than 10 times against the falling Black Panther in the space of 1 second. With each sword blow, he executed the thunderbolt technique. Bam! Bam! After blocking the very first strike, the Black Panther's body had begun to accelerate its downward falling speed. But using his Air Wings spell, Linley was still able to match the Black Panther's rate of descent. One sword, then another, then another. The Black Panther felt as though each sword stroke of Linley's was more forceful and heavier than the last, and each sword stroke unleashed the same explosive, flood-like burst of power, causing its internal organs to shake. After taking over 10 blows, the body of the enormous Black Panther was smashed all the way into the ground by Linley. Boom! An enormous crater appeared, and cracks appeared in every direction on the ground. The roots of the massive trees around them began to emerge from the ground, uprooted from the force of this collision. In the middle of the crater, the enormous Black Panther spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood, and even a hint of blood could be seen coming out of its fur. These repeated blows by Linley's heavy sword had caused even the Black Panther's fur to be unable to withstand all of the attack force. Black Panther! Linley stood in midair, over 10 meters above it. His translucent wings fluttered. I know that you understand the human tongue. I'll give you a chance. As long as you submit to me, I'll spare your life. Right now, Linley really wanted to tame and acquire this magical beast. Linley had been in sore need of a good mount this entire time. And, even more importantly, this Black Panther was an extremely superior creature, especially after it transformed in size. Its enormous, 2-story tall body, combined with its astonishing speed and defense made it an absolute war machine. Growl! The enormous Black Panther stood up, staring coldly at Linley. Its deadly eyes were filled with boundless wrath. Its head was still raised proudly. How could it possibly submit so easily? But right now, the Black Panther understood that this human warrior in front of it wasn't the prey it had thought he was. For a warrior to possess such terrifying power and also be able to use a high-level wind-style spell such as Air Wings was an expert which was extremely rare in the human world. Are you willing to submit? Linley shouted from up high. As far as magical beasts were concerned, only martial force could make them submit and subdue them. And the higher the rank of a magical beast, the more difficult it was to make them submit. Growl! The enormous Black Panther let out an angry roar. "If you won't submit, then I'll beat you until you do." Linley was very confident. When combining his magic with his warrior abilities, his power could rise to an astonishing level. Right now, due to the pair of translucent air wings on his back, Linley was in total control of the battlefield. Swish! Linley once more dived downwards. The movement speed of the pair of translucent wings was higher than that which four limbs provided. In the blink of an eye, Linley appeared in front of the enormous Black Panther as he once more smashed downwards viciously against it with his adamantine heavy sword. But the Black Panther only retreated over 10 meters at high speed, then pounced forward again. Flexing his translucent wings, Linley began to dodge about very agilely in the air while constantly chopping downwards with his adamantine heavy sword. Every sword carried with it a terrifying force, capable of flattening a hill. Bam! The enormous Black Panther's body was once more struck by the adamantine heavy sword and knocked flying. Blood had matted its glossy black fur with a red color. Linley stood confidently in midair, ready to strike another blow at the Black Panther at any moment with his adamantine heavy sword. "Will you submit?" Linley said in a solemn voice. The Black Panther once more rose to its feet, staring coldly at Linley. Sudden lithe Black Panther's body began to shrink. It once more shrunk down to a height of 2 meters and a length of 4 meters, but the strange thing was, this time, the Black Panther's entire body began to glow with a hazy black and white light. What on earth? Sensing danger, Linley quickly flew a bit higher using his translucent wings, cautiously staring down. That black and white light disappeared. The Black Panther's body, previously covered with a large, dense amount of black stripes, now only had a few thick black stripes on its upper body, while the fur on its four limbs had turned as white as snow. Seeing this, Linley sucked in a cold breath. Black Cloud Panther? The legendary Black Cloud Panther? Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 7, A Battle of Speed. The most powerful Panther-type magical beast would probably be the Saint-level magical beast, Electrobolt Panther, a lightning-type magical beast. It was so incredibly fast that other Saint-level beasts simply couldn't compare to it. But the most secretive, most mysterious Panther-type magical beast would be the 9th-ranked magical beast, Black Cloud Panther. According to records, the last time a Black Cloud Panther appeared was over 1,000 years ago. Despite so many years having passed, the amount of information which people had managed to collect regarding Black Cloud Panthers remained very scarce. Black Cloud Panthers were magical beasts of the 9th rank, and extremely fast. Their bodies were covered with just a few black stripes, but their four limbs were snow white, as though they were traveling within a cloud. This was why people gave them the name, Black Cloud Panthers. But with regards to what special abilities the Black Cloud Panthers had, or what element they were, the records had no information. Most likely, all of the experts who encountered Black Cloud Panthers lost their lives. As for those Saint-level combatants who knew the truth about Black Cloud Panthers, perhaps they intentionally did not reveal any information. Linley knew very well that many of the more powerful organizations held secrets which were closely guarded. Even spells of the 7th rank would not be revealed. From this, one could imagine how secretive these organizations were. Within this densely forested area in the core region of the mountain range of magical beasts, the Black Cloud Panther was exchanging stares with Linley, who was floating in midair with translucent wings on his back. Black Cloud Panthers can change their size as well as their appearances. They truly are quite mysterious. Linley didn't dare to relax at all. The Black Cloud Panther stared coldly at Linley, its icy eyes filled with fury. Swish! In the blink of an eye, the Black Cloud Panther crossed the 50-meter gap between itself and Linley. Compared to before, when it was in its first form, normal size and covered with wavy black stripes, it was almost 50 faster. 50. For its speed to increase by that much prevented Linley from being able to dodge, and the Black Cloud Panther landed a vicious blow against Linley's chest. Immediately, the scales on his chest shattered. Crack! With a cracking sound, fresh blood leaked out from behind the scales. Whoosh! Linley immediately activated his translucent wings, rapidly rising higher into the air. What incredible speed! Linley felt shocked in his heart. The black cloud panther, in its first form, was slightly faster than Bebe. In its second form, the large form, the speed of the black cloud panther decreased by 30, roughly on par with Linley. In its third form, the one it was in right now, it was 50 faster than the original form. At this current speed, it could cross 100 meters in the blink of an eye. How utterly terrifying! Gruel! The black cloud panther raised its head to look up at Linley, its eyes filled with arrogance. Linley slowly flapped his translucent wings, but didn't descend yet, merely hovering. Linley knew very well that once he descended, he would find it very difficult to deal with the black cloud panther's speed. Boss, my turn. Having watched for so long, Bebe could no longer hold himself back. Shriek! With a terrifying, high-pitched shriek, Bebe transformed into a ferocious black blur, charging at the black cloud panther. The black cloud panther, which hadn't paid any attention to Bebe at all, was now shocked by Bebe's speed. Supersonic! Linley immediately cast this supportive magic spell. He cast the supportive supersonic spell directly on Bebe. In the past, Bebe had never encountered any magical beasts of the 9th rank faster than himself. Thus, Linley had never seen the need to cast supersonic on Bebe. But now, Linley finally did so.